Hello there, Rule Zero listeners. It's me, Shawn. Just getting all decked out for the festive season of Chrism Crasm, also known as Christmas here in the States. If you're inundated by it, tired of it, I apologize. This shaky cam will end, and it will have something to do with Commander before long. Eggnog. Not really. It's actually just coffee to keep me awake. So, what we're going to talk about is thematic to Christmas, which is why this weird opening is happening right now. We're going to talk about a mechanic from Bloomborough. It had 14 cards total, 12 from the main set, 2 from the precons that I'm aware of. I'll research that and make sure that's absolutely correct. We're going to talk about none other than gift. Gift a card, gift a fish token, gift an extra turn, all sorts of other weird things. And for these gifts, what do you get back? Well, these are regular old spells that have a little bit of a bonus or an addendum to them if you're willing to give a card to an opponent. In 1v1, not great. However, I would argue that in Commander, it's not so bad. And it depends on whether or not you're a political player. And if you're not, may I suggest a video for you? I'll post it right up here somewhere in this corner by the Christmas tree or the little wooden soldier person. I don't know. Anyway, so without further ado, let's go ahead, check in with all 14 of these cards. We're going to tell you and rank them based on a metric I've come up with on my own of whether or not they should see more play or whether they're okay just living in the dustbin of forgotten presents that no one wants to get from Aunt Martha. Sorry. Hey there, let's talk about the metrics I'm going to use to judge whether or not these cards are going to be good in a game of Commander. We'll talk about casual Commander mostly, as that is what I'm most familiar with. Use this for anything from high power casual on down to precon or below levels of gameplay. The first metric that we're going to talk about today is none other than, is this card good enough to run without giving a gift? Am I happy with the effect as it is on the card sans gift giving? Just in that awful case that it's just me 1v1 with the opponent and I don't necessarily want to give any gifts to that person. There isn't like a third or fourth person at the table who is sort of an ally. 2, am I afraid of the gift that much? Because I just said I don't want to give a gift to a 1v1 player. However, if the gift is a tapped fish and I'm going to kill the person with the card I'm using, I don't really care. If the gift is a card drawn, but they don't have any mana open, then I probably don't really care. I think there's a lot of circumstantial things in this element, and you'll have to decide on your own as you see the cards. Is this gift something I'm really scared of? Because a tapped fish can be a glorious gift to a person who doesn't have any blockers, say, but really wants one. Now let's talk about the grades themselves. You will see these grades flash up on top of the cards as we're reviewing them. They are going to go as follows. You're probably familiar with some of this if you've watched any internet ranking videos at all. But just to make specifically clear about what we're doing here, we're going to go with the top tier. S tier is an absolute format all-star. In this grading is something like a Teferi's Protection. This card will see play across all styles of play, anytime you can potentially run it because it's just that powerful. The next tier down is going to be A tier. And in terms of gift cards, what we're looking at, this is great in most casual decks. So anything, if you use a number system, unfortunately, it would be like 4 to 7 or whatever for your just lower power casual decks. And who knows who plays a 1, 2, or 3. Also, it is great political advantage possible. So the gift that you give is so strong in the right circumstances that it can be a game-changing sort of effect. Then we're going to go down to B tier. This is a good effect in general. The card is decent without giving the gift, and it's politically navigable. So If the gift is, say, a tapped fish and you have a deck full of flyers, well, you don't really care. Birds do not care about fish. That is proven in science. Well, I guess they eat them, but other than eating them, they don't care much about them. Now we have the lower level C. This is a highly specific theme driven sort of card. This is the only place you're going to want to run this type of card because it's not the greatest effect, but in the right theme deck or something like that, it could be useful. And the political advantage is negligible at best. But those cards do exist in this list, so we're going to talk about them. And then finally, we're going to skip D and go straight to F. F is absolute trash. There is no comprehensible reason that anyone would play this card, nor do I understand why it was even created as a card in the first place. And spoiler alert, there are some of those on this list as well. All right, now we're going to talk about the common gift cards first. There are 5 of them, one for each color. We're going to hit the white one last. On the screen right now, you can look at the left side and see Long Stalk Brawl. For 1 green, a sorcery, gift a tapped fish. Now, gift, the way it works, we're going to go over it for the first time, but not any other, just to make sure you understand, because for some of these cards, it will be important in what order the gift happens. You may promise an opponent a gift as you cast this spell. If you do, they create a tapped 1/1 blue fish creature before its other effects. Obviously, replace fish creature with whatever the gift is, but the important part there is that the gift happens before the effects of the spell happen. And for some of these cards, that will matter, but this is the last time we're going to talk about the mechanic and how it works. So, Longstalk Brawl, 1 green, sorcery. Choose target creature you control and target creature you don't control. Put a +1/+1 counter on the creature you control if the gift was promised. Then those creatures fight each other. Longstalk Brawl is simply a fight card for 1 green at sorcery speed. There are many cards that are better than this in the format. However, if for some reason you have a rabbit or a badger or whatever these creatures are in your deck and that's a theme for you, we're going to say that this is a C level card. You can play it in a thematic deck. It's fun. It works for that. Next, Mind Spiral. 4 and a blue, a sorcery. Gift a tapped fish. Target player draws 3 cards. If the gift was promised, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. So you can draw 3 cards for 5 mana. That's the baseline effect. That is sort of okay for draft. It's not great for commander. However, it does have a little mouse with a curly Q thing on it. So we're going to go ahead and give this a C. It's going to have to be really bad to be an F level card. So drawing 3 cards for 5 mana, it's not horrendous. And being able to tap a creature an opponent controls to put a stun counter on it is perhaps okay in some circumstances where you might be about to die. Yeah, and gifting a tap fish is not a bad effect or a bad trade-off for that. Nocturnal Hunger. 2 and a black. Instant. Gift of food. Destroy target creature. If the gift wasn't promised, you lose 2 life. So what this is a black kill spell. It's pretty art. Not sure what the theme might be other than just sort of fairy creatures or something like that. But it's an instant speed kill spell in black, and you would lose two life if you don't give the gift. So I think that's okay. It's not going to blow anybody's mind. So we're going to give this a C as well. Again, these are common cards, so we'll get to the meat and the fun stuff later. Sazakap's Brew. 1 and a red, instant. Gift a tapped fish. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card. Target player draws 2 cards. If the gift was promised, target creature you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So what this spell is 1 and a red, instant speed, discard a card to draw 2 cards, and then you can get a creature +2/+0 if for some reason you're using like a combat trick plus card draw. I think this is specifically for limited. I'm going to give this a fat F. There are many cards that are just as good as this, if not better, in red. So the only giving 1 creature +2/+0 is so weird and niche that I don't even think there's any place in a game of Commander where you would want to do that in 99% of games. The final gift card for common level is Crumb and Get It. For 1 white and instant. Gift of food. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn.
if the gift was promised, that creature also gains indestructible until end of turn. The question here is, would you pay 3 life to make your creature +2/+2 and indestructible? Possibly. So for that reason, we're going to give this card a C. It is not an F, it's not a fail. It's certainly a limited card, but I can at least understand where you might use this in a game of Commander, specifically if, say, you had a Voltron Commander or something like that. And now, on to the uncommons. Okay, now here is where we hopefully start getting into some of the really B level or even A level cards. Let's check it out. First is Blooming Blast. For 1 and a red, an instant, gift a treasure. Blooming Blast deals 2 damage to target creature if the gift was promised. Blooming Blast also deals 3 damage to that creature's controller. So for the cost of a treasure, I can deal 3 damage to someone's face and 2 damage to target creature. In the specific deck, again, this is going to be a C because in a specific deck, that anything that has damage doublers, triplers on the battlefield, and often in red, that's very common, you might be doing 6 damage to a creature and 9 damage to the creature's controller, and that is much, much better for 2 mana at instant speed, but in those specific decks only. Next, Consumed by Greed. 1, 2 black, instant, gift a card. Target opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. If the gift was promised, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So, this is a 3 mana instant speed, causes a particular player to sacrifice the highest power creature among all the things they control. I don't necessarily love power here. I prefer to have casting cost or converted mana cost or whatever they use now for the nomenclature for that, because sometimes I want to remove the scariest threat, and often that is dictated not by the power, but instead by like how much that card costs to put out. I'll let them skip by on this. It is an uncommon. I think I want to give this one a B, only because at instant speed, you get to have sort of a real flip of momentum and you're gifting a card to someone else. And politically, that is an advantageous position to be in sometimes. And that's sort of what the B level political cards are, is like sometimes I'm okay with this card just doing its thing. I can cause them to sacrifice for 3 mana, but I can really flip momentum here if I gift a card to, say, like that person's enemy who is also my friend, sort of thing, a third party. That would be pretty sweet. But in a 1v1 situation, you may not want to gift them that card at all. So we're just going to stick with a B level, but it's B minus, C plus range. Next, Dewdrop Cure. 2 and a white. Sorcery. Gift a card. Return up to 2 target creature cards, each with mana value 2 or less, from your graveyard to the battlefield. And if the gift was promised, instead return up to 3 target creature cards, each with mana value 2 or less, from the graveyard to the battlefield. Sorcery speed really tanks this one for me. I think we're just going to give this one a C. Thematic, it has a super cute like rat drinking a dewdrop off of a flower petal, and for some reason it's wounded. I mean, it's hard to get sappier and more cute than that. But outside of the little tiny mouse decks, where you're trying to pull things out of the yard, getting two mana creatures out of a yard can be useful in something that runs things like Soul Ward and stuff like that. And this is the color of that. So maybe in sort of a life gain aristocrats deck, this is okay. Sorcery speed really kills it for me, though. Lastly, Into the Flood Maw. 1 blue, instant, gift a tapped fish. Return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand, and if the gift was promised, instead return target non-land permanent opponent controls to its owner's hand. It's going to be tough to find space for this kind of effect in a deck, so basically it's an unsummon. It will unsummon a creature. And actually, not even an unsummon. It's worse because it's only opponent's things. Oftentimes, these cards can be sort of useful or modal in that they could return an enemy creature or they could return your creature if it's being targeted. This one can't even do that. So I think what we're going to do is, unfortunately, even though returning a non-land permanent is useful, we're going to give this blue instant, hard to do on my part because I tend to like these type of tempo-y plays, a fat F. And fat with a PHAT, because it's like an F plus. Do better next time. Okay, let's keep moving with these uncommons. We've got 7 left total, so hopefully blue will do better in this round. Next up, Long River's Pull. For 2 blue and instant, gift a card. Counter target creature spell. If the gift was promised, instead, counter target spell. Well, blue's not doing that well now. This is, in effect, so for 2 blue, you can counter a creature spell. That's an essence scatter. So it's already worse than an essence scatter because it costs 2 blue instead of blue and 1. And if you gift a card, it turns into a counter spell. So if you need to run, there's literally no reason to run this unless you have a frog deck. And even then, I'm just going to give it F for frog because that's the only time you would ever run this card. I'm sorry, blue. It is so bad. Parting Gust. 2 white, instant, gift a tapped fish. Exile target non-token creature. If the gift wasn't promised, return that creature to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it at the beginning of the next instep. So all this thing does is bounces a creature basically, unless you gift a tapped fish, and then it can exile a non-token creature. I don't love that. White has enough instant speed removal that is exile removal, such as like Swords to Plowshares or Path to Exile or whatever. And granted, this is better than a Path to Exile because you're not giving a basic land. But the non-token thing is weird. Stop doing that kind of clause on cards. I'm assuming this is limited fodder only. F. That's right. F. F for Frabbit. Peerless Recycling. 1 and a green, instant. Gift a card. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand if the gift was promised. Instead, return 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. We're going to give this card a C. The deal is, at instant speed, that's pretty strong. I do love regrowth effects that are instant speed, and there aren't that many of them. The problem I have with it is that it's permanent cards only. Green has more and more powerful spells these days. Let's say that you wanted to go ahead and get your regrowth back to your hand and have some kind of crazy loop, or you wanted to get a Beast Within, or a Rishkar's Expertise. We can go on and on. Green has a lot of powerful spells these days because the color pie keeps shattering into 1,000 billion pieces, and so they don't care as much about just permanents anymore. Now, getting 2 permanents back at the price of a card, it's not unplayable. So we're going to give this one a C. It has a raccoon, a pumpkin, a teapot. There's all kinds of it's randomly AI generated as far as I can tell. Not the art, but just the idea. Finally, Star-Forged Sword for 4 colorless artifact equipment. I'm hopeful it has a bird. I love birds. It's carrying a giant rocky looking sword in the art if you're listening on the podcast version. Gift a tapped fish. When Starforged Sword enters, if the gift was promised, attach Starforged Sword to target creature you control so you don't have to pay the equip cost. Equip creature gets +3/+3 and loses flying. Equip for 3 normally. Okay, so this is also unfortunately a fat F. I'm basically playing a 3/3 bonus sword for 4 mana, and I the creature loses flying. It loses evasion. So it becomes slightly bigger for the cost of losing all evasion and 7 mana or 4 mana and gifting someone a creature that can potentially block it later. This is a horrific card. I'm sorry, birds. I would never run this in a bird tribal deck, not even if it was my last possible slot and I had to replace a bird with a shapeshifter. That's how strongly I feel about this card being bad. And the last 3 uncommon cards are coming right up. So here we are, the final hurrah for uncommon cards. Hopefully, we'll get some good stuff here, or if not, and I'm pretty certain we're going to get some good cards in the rare slot. There are 8 of those. So, if you're feeling underwhelmed, I understand, but we're going to get to the good stuff at the end as we should. Valley Rally. 2 in a red, instant, gift of food. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. If the gift was promised, target creature you control gains first strike until end of turn. So this is sort of like a surprise anthem effect. So you can give everything +2/+0. That's mildly playable. It has a mouse with an insane red shard of glass or feather or something that's glowing. I'm not really sure what's happening. And a bunch of other little creatures in the background cheering for it. So it's rallying the troops. +2/+0. And the gifting of food is not a bad gift. I mean, like, sure, you can give somebody a little bit of extra life, but say you give this to the opponent that you're antheming out, that's not a bad effect. We're going to give this a C. This is a playable card in a theme deck. It may even be borderline C+, B-, because just it's a powerful effect, and gifting a food to somebody doesn't really matter all that much. Wear down. 1 and a green, sorcery, gift a card, destroy target artifact or enchantment if the gift was promised. Instead, destroy 2 target artifacts or enchantments. I love the art. It's got a beaver that's taking down someone's tree. Unfortunately, it's taking down a bird tree, which is an absolute sin in the world of animal creatures. But the beaver going to beaver. It's going to do what it's going to do. And sorcery speed really kills this for me. So we're going to go ahead and give this one a fat F. I think green has plenty of instant speed exile removal even these days, but also just destroy artifact and enchantment removal. We don't need to gift an extra card to someone for this sort of limited impact effect. Lastly, Wildfire Howl. 1 and 2 red, sorcery, gift a card. Wildfire Howl deals 2 damage to each creature if the gift was promised. Instead, Wildfire Howl deals 1 damage to any target and 2 damage to each creature. So this is a horrifically bad card. It's a wolf on fire, which is scary, and I don't like it. But regardless of that, for 1 and 2 red, it's not a splashable card, and it's sorcery speed. It only does a pyroclasm effect, which I believe is 1 and a red for the same exact impact. The gifting the card bonus is 1 damage to any target. That's it. Or is it that it's 1 damage to any target and then an additional 2 damage to each creature? So let me read this again. Wildfire Howl deals 2 damage to each creature if the gift was promised. Instead, Wildfire deals 1 damage to any target and 2 damage to each creature. So I'm pretty certain it's just 2 damage across the board. And then 1 damage that pings somebody in the face in Commander. That's severely underwhelming. I don't even know if this is good in Limited. I would be curious to see the win rate of this on 17lands.com. If you don't know what that is, then it's okay. You don't have to know. It's limited. This is bad. F. Let's get to these rares, please. Okay, maybe the rares in this set of gift cards will save us. I hope so. Coiling Rebirth for 3 and 2 black, a sorcery, gift a card. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Then, if the gift was promised and that creature isn't legendary, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a 1/1. So for 5 black mana, you're going to go ahead and pull a creature card out of the graveyard to the battlefield. Period. That's great. You can even pull a legend out. I mean, that's a fine rate. It's not unusual. That starts the card out at like a B level. Let's see if it continues. If the creature, so if you give a card and the creature isn't legendary, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a 1/1. So you get this additional bonus impact if the creature is non-legendary and has an ETB. Is that enough to bump it up to A level? I am not certain on that one. I think I'm just going to stick with B for this. It's playable. Gifting a card to an ally is not bad, because you're going to get 2 powerful ETB effects potentially if you're gifting that thing. Next, Cruel Claw's Heist for 2 black, sorcery, gift a card. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land permanent from it. Exile that card. If the gift was promised, you may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast it. So this is like a Thoughtseize effect in that you get to take any card you want to. Not only that, not only is it not just discarded, it is put in an exile zone. And if you gift a card to someone, then you go ahead and are able to cast that. I think this is really important to pay attention to, because this is where that gift layering happens and it matters. You're going to give the card to the opponent first. That's going to happen before the spell happens. So you're never going to be in danger, even if you're 1v1 with an opponent, of giving them something that's too powerful, because you're going to be able to take that, exile it, and then play it yourself afterwards. And that way it's almost a benefit. This is an A. Straight up an A. I don't know if it's an S, but taking the person's best card out of their hand and then you playing it is maybe close to the S tier for me. I think this is playable in almost any black deck. It can really change momentum. I don't know what could necessarily make it better, honestly. So yeah, we're just going to go with S for Cruel Claw's Heist, not just A. I think this is an excellent card. Next, Dawn's Truce. 1 and a white. Instant, gift a card. You and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. If the gift was promised, permanents you control also gain indestructible until end of turn. So this gives all of your permanents hexproof. They can't be targeted. You can surprise someone for 1 and a white. That is mildly powerful. It has a bird on it. Bird is very powerful in itself. And if the gift was promised, then permanents you control also gain indestructible until end of turn. I'm going to go ahead and give this card a B. I would love to give it, well, maybe I'll give it an A. I'll give it an A. Bird Law. That's all it is. Basically, indestructible and hexproof for just 2 mana. I gift a card to my ally. This is very political in nature, right? Even if I'm gifting a card to the person who's trying to destroy my whole board, I don't know if that's going to help them that much because I've already eliminated whatever this big catastrophic effect is, and I've made everything hexproof as well, which means that things can't be exiled in a pinch. So I don't even need to gift a card for that. Dawn's Truce, A. If you want to talk about it in the comments, let's go ahead and hash it out and see where we want to land. But right now, off the cuff, I'm going to give this card an A. I do play this in my bird tribal deck because of the theme as well. So I think it's a flavor win too. Next, Kidnap. 2 and 2 blue, enchantment aura, gift a card, enchant creature. When Kidnap enters, tap enchanted creature. If the gift wasn't promised, put 3 stun counters on it. You control enchanted creature. Rare for a a rare to have this grade, but we're going to give this one an F because Kidnap is control magic, but extremely worse. It's control magic that either forces you to give a card to somebody or puts 3 stun counters on the thing if you don't gift that card, which means you can't use it. Even if you control it, it's stunned and it's tapped. This is a horrifically bad card. As we're seeing with these cards, there's a theme. Blue is terrible. And I think this was reflected in limited at the time. Like if people were drafting, I think blue is just really underplayed. Go ahead and leave a comment below if you know that to be true. But these blue cards are so sad. I'm actually sad looking at them. But we've had a real mix of cards. Let's get to the last 4 and then do a little wrap up. Here it is, the final hurrah. This is the only place that we're going to see the Bloomborough Commander cards because there were 2 of those that added to the additional other 22 from the main set. First, this is a fascinating one. Octomancer, 3 and a green and a blue. Creature, frog, druid, a 3/3. Gift an octopus. So it's important to go through a little bit of the reminder text because what is this octopus? It's not a 1/1 fish. No, it is an 8/8 blue octopus creature token. So you're giving someone else an 8/8. Extreme. However, at the beginning of each end step, create a token that's a copy of target creature token that entered the battlefield this turn. So you play this on your turn. Octomancer gets to make an 8/8 as well. So you have a 3/3 and an 8/8, and you give a friend an 8/8, and then every other turn, if you know that a lot of people are playing creature decks around you or token decks, then you can make copies of all of their tokens as well. This could potentially get out of hand because you can use it on your end step as well. So if you make extra tokens, you can make more extra. So that's not proper grammar, but you kind of see how this gets a little silly, a little out of hand if people aren't playing removal. However, this creature has no protection whatsoever, and there's no guarantee this thing is going to get around the table, particularly if people see it as a threat to them making their own token armies. So I'm going to give Octomancer a C. I think in a theme deck with the frog, it's kind of cool. Other than that, I just don't see it seeing that much play. However, here is Perch Protection. This does see play in my bird tribal deck, of course. It's 4 and 2 white. Instant. Gift an extra turn. Ridiculous, right? Why in the world would I want to do that? Let me make the case. Create 4/2/2 bluebird creature tokens with flying. That's it. So for 6 mana, make 4/2/2 blue birds. Great. Then you exile Perch Protection at the end, just so I guess shenanigans can't happen with gifting extra turns. However, if you do gift that extra turn, all permanents you control phase out until your next turn. Your life total can't change, and you gain protection from everything. You know when this card is great? This card is great when there's someone of equal power to you on the table that is about to go off and smash people. We're not talking combo win, because if it's sort of a combo win where it says like literally they win the game, this card's not going to help you at all. But those are very rare. What we're talking about is like creature decks or some kind of deck that's just going to do a ton of damage. You phase out, gain protection from everything, and your life total can't change. What this does is not only does it equip you with a bunch of guys on your turn to start turn the tide, take advantage, take out the remaining player, you're gifting an extra turn to the second biggest threat on the table, or the biggest threat perhaps on the table, and knowing that they're going to take out the other two. They're going to use that extra turn in the most devious, catastrophic way, take out those two. And hopefully you have developed your hand to the point. The only time you would use this extra turn thing is if you feel safe and that, like, I have counterspell backup, I have another thing like a Teferi's Pro or something like that. But if I gift that extra turn, he's going to take out two other players and I'm not going to have to worry about it. I think this is a fascinating card. I'm going to give this an A. It's not S because, yeah, S would be like any situation ever. But I think that this politically sounds scary, but think about the possibilities. Gifting somebody an extra turn to take out two of your opponents, I do that all day anyway. I try to turn people against each other constantly in EDH, so this is right up my alley. Next, Scrap Shooter, 1 and 2 green, creature raccoon archer, 4/4 with reach. Great rate for like a standard playable. It might even be playable in like a stompy green commander deck. Gift a card. In it, when Scrap Shooter enters, if the gift was promised, destroy target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. So a little bit of bonus in a stompy deck. We're going to say that this is a C-level card. You may not want to gift a card all the time to have this effect, but in a pinch, if you have to do it, you have to do it. I think in a Raccoon deck, obviously this goes in. It's good removal in that way, but C, theme. Next, and the final card we're going to talk about today, Starfall Invocation. 3, 2 white, sorcery, gift a card, destroy all creatures. If the gift was promised, return a creature card into your graveyard. Return a creature card put into your graveyard this way to the battlefield under your control. So if something dies to this, you get to return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. I think, yeah, it's worded a little weirdly. It kind of threw me because I was like, am I putting a creature card put into the graveyard from anywhere? No, it has to be from my graveyard under my control. It's very strange wording. Anyway, I think this card is a solid B. 5 mana for a white board wipe is a little overcosted, to be honest, when we have things like Day of Judgment and Wrath of God. But it's put over the top a little bit by having this effect of like, oh, I get to get one big thing back. Fine. Now let's talk about the wrap up. In conclusion, I'm really happy that they created this gift mechanic. I think it's a much better, more playable version of tempting offer rather. Previously, there were six cards, 7 cards, I believe, that have tempting offer, stemming back to the early days of Commander, where you would do an effect and then offer every other opponent to do that effect as well, thus doubling, tripling, or quadrupling, or whatever the amount that of benefit that you got. But the only card that ever worked in practice like that was Tempt with Discovery for 3 and a green, a sorcery. Search your library for a land card, put it onto the battlefield, and each opponent may search the library for a land card and put it on the battlefield. And then for each one of those opponents who did that, you got to search for extra lands. So you would come out often with like 2, 3, 4 lands, whereas everybody else would get 1. The reason this card was so great was because, one, it searched for any kind of land, so it would search for really horrific lands, and opponents could too. 2, it has leverage to it. So in Commander, often people are running short on lands, and they were unable to sort of like meet their land demands, so they would have to take your offer. The other tempting offers weren't really that heavy-handed, like give you a couple creatures and you get double that amount. Nah, that's okay. I'm okay with you not doing that, and not taking you up on that offer. So gift is a much more controllable thing. So I can like choose if I want to give the gift instead of having to depend on my opponents saying, yes, I will take you up on that. So you can use it in a much more managed, sort of intentional way. And I really like that. However, as we saw with the statistics, and you can see on the screen right now, we had only 1 S level card, 2 A level cards, 3 B level cards. 10 C level cards, and 8 F level cards. If you were using those grades to get out of high school, I'm sorry, you have failed. You are not out of high school. You are at best like barely eking through, depending on the generosity of your teachers to help. I feel that they really made this mechanic more for limited than anything else. Or they made it for limited and were extra mindful that it might be busted in Commander because the cards are kind of underpowered. And Wizards is tending to do this now with new mechanics, trial runs basically. They don't want to push things too hard for some reason, even though in like things like Modern Horizons 3 they push the mechanics to the absolute max and break every format there is. In your regular standard sets, I'm guessing that they're not trying to push things too much. I don't think Gift sees really any play in standard, but in Commander, the ability to control it is useful. I do appreciate that they did it, and I hope they come back with more gift cards rather than tempting offer cards. I think one is just superior to the other. I have a lot more fun when I know that I can control the parameters, make the deal how I want it to make, and kind of build the allies I want to build instead of just depending on my opponents to say, like, yeah, sure, I'll fall into this trap on my own. Um, it's just not as good. Oftentimes, tempting offer cards ended with literally no one else taking the deal, and you're wondering why I even run this card in the first place. So, I hope that you enjoyed this episode as we deep dived into sort of a mechanic that was new and sort of almost built for Commander, it seems. I thoroughly enjoyed researching these cards and looking through them, and I feel now that hopefully you have a good grasp as well of what cards can be used politically or not in your own decks at home. If you want to find me, you can find me at rule0podcast at gmail.com. That's the number 0. You can find me on X at rule0podcast or on Blue Sky at rule0podcast at bsky.social. Whatever their system of things is. If you're searching, I think rule0podcast, magic will find me. Talk to me there. I'm certainly there more than I am on X these days, in part because it seems like a nicer environment so far. And so I'm happy to talk with you, however, wherever you are. And remember, in Magic, there is no problem that a Rule 0 conversation cannot solve.